If you were the ruler of a great and vast ancient empire, what would you build to honor your realm's power and wealth? Perhaps you would order the construction of a massive tomb that would be a sight to behold from across the Nile, like that of the Great Pyramid of Giza of the Egyptian kingdoms. No? Not your style? Well, what about the Colossus of Rhodes, a 33-meter-high statue of Helios, the god of the sun, who stands guard over the ancient Greek city of Rhodes? Or a towering lighthouse, such as the one at Alexandria, to guide merchants and travelers to the ports of the city? These constructs of might, opulence, and splendor are just 3 of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, whose grand architectural feats became magnificent sights to behold. But only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world has never been recovered, remaining a legend of affluence and glory of the grand ancient world. Did it ever exist, or was it a figment of ancient literature and myth, or was it a real construct of epic proportion? Today, we'll be searching for more answers about the alluring history and legend of the most mysterious wonder out of all of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the only one of the 7 ancient wonders to still be standing today. Even though the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, the Statue of Zeus at Olympia, and the Colossus of Rhodes are no longer standing, archaeological evidence proves their existence. The only one of the 7 wonders that remains a figment of history and legend would be the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. While gardens were not a new concept in antiquity, they cultivated a botanical arrangement for luxury rather than for farming, and were seen as a rarity and a symbol of wealth and extravagance. This is why in ancient Mesopotamia, the Hanging Gardens became such an iconic feature of the region, especially when taking into account its extravagant size. The city of Babylon, located in Mesopotamia along the Euphrates River about 88 kilometers south of Baghdad, had been founded in the 24th century BC and had been a part of several Mesopotamian kingdoms and had been destroyed and rebuilt several times over the course of its lengthy history. In the 7th century BC, under King Nabopolassar, Babylon became the heart of the Neo-Babylonian Empire after it was freed from the Assyrian Empire, revitalizing the city to magnificence and prominence. But it was Nabopolassar's son, King Nebuchadnezzar II, who ascended to the Babylonian throne in 605 BC that has traditionally been associated with the founder of the Hanging Gardens. Nebuchadnezzar is best remembered for his expansion of the Babylonian Empire, extending its borders to Egypt and Assyria, and allying himself with the Medians through his marriage. He is credited with building several noticeable edifices for the development of the city, including a wall around the city, the Gate of Ishtar, a ziggurat, and the temple of the patron god of Babylon, Marduk. But it was the Hanging Gardens that has remained the most famous architectural construction attributed to Nebuchadnezzar. According to the writings of 3rd century BC Babylonian priest Bel-Azru of Marduk, which are translated and studied in the 1st century AD by historian Josephus, the Hanging Gardens were built in the 6th century BC as a gift for Nebuchadnezzar's homesick Median wife, Queen Amytis. The dry, flat, and blistering deserts of Babylon were a far cry from the forested, cool highlands of Media. It was said that Amytis yearned for a mountainous homeland. To make her feel more comfortable in Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar was said to have ordered the construction of a rising garden next to the Grand Palace, which is better known as the Marvel of Mankind. The Hanging Gardens were designed to resemble mountains, built of stone with balconies peering out over terraced layers and stairs. Each level was deep enough for broad irrigation and for the various roots to effectively take hold. Towering trees, a variety of flowers, numerous vines, and several different kinds of bushes and shrubs were planted to build a lush and vibrant garden. The trees were said to have been planted in clusters to cool those in the garden, protect them from the harsh windstorms of the desert, and allow for them to have shade. Along the sides of the tiers, dangling vines and branches gracefully overhung the sides of the building itself, giving the garden its famous name. Statues and reliefs were installed among babbling brooks that poured into pools and watered the vegetation, To protect from any leaks, bitumen, reeds, lead and tiles were used. To bring water for the ponds and the plants, a complex and well-engineered irrigation system, most likely an Archimedes screw, was mentioned as the means to pull water from either a well or the Euphrates River itself. The Hanging Gardens became synonymous with elegance and luxury, a beautiful feature to complement the royal palace, the gates of Ishtar, and the wall that surrounded the city of Babylon. The plant life of the gardens, described by ancient writers, which should be noted were written between 200 and 600 years after Nebuchadnezzar's reign and depicted in reliefs, showed a variety of vegetation, from draping vines, exotic and imported woods, and indigenous fruit trees. Imagine a spectacular tower oasis of greenery overlooking the desert, breaking the monotonous drab of the Babylonian terrain. It would have been an absolutely stunning sight to behold. But here is where the conundrum begins. There are no records whatsoever of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon in contemporary Babylonian texts. There is no evidence Nebuchadnezzar II even built the gardens, let alone married a queen named Amytis. Wouldn't the building of such a magnificent garden be mentioned before, during, or after its construction, or even in passing? Wouldn't the name of a queen be known? And what about physical evidence? There is little, if any, archaeological proof the Hanging Gardens were in Babylon. Wouldn't there be something left behind? Especially something as huge as a terraced garden. So, did it even exist? How could so many people believe it existed, yet alone how could the real location never be found? Let's just say for one moment that the Hanging Gardens existed, but weren't in Babylon, but somewhere else in Mesopotamia. Academics have speculated that the Hanging Gardens were really situated in the city of Nineveh, erected by 9th century BC semi-legendary Assyrian queen Semiramis or King Sennacherib at the end of the 8th or start of the 7th century BC. Artifacts and physical evidence of expansive gardens have been uncovered in Nineveh, including at the palace of Sennacherib, which were also recorded by contemporary sources. It has been posited that the gardens were part of other structures, but there has been little evidence to prove it. Canals and waterways have been rediscovered near the palace of Sennacherib, indicating complex irrigation systems and plumbing that would coincide with ancient Assyrian texts and inscriptions describing using screws to bring water up to terrace gardens. Yet, were these gardens the famous Hanging Gardens? Why would Babylon be the place everyone says the Hanging Gardens are located when there isn't any proof? It has been suggested that the lack of period texts proves that the gardens were not built by Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. Hardly any archaeological evidence has been found along the Euphrates to explicitly prove the gardens really existed, although it must be said that much of the region remains unexamined due to war, modern dangers, and political obstacles. Literary evidence surrounding the history of the Hanging Gardens, which remains far more extensive, was recorded centuries after the supposed construction of the gardens. This has led many to believe the Hanging Gardens were either a myth, a poetic creation of foreign writers and historians, or a mistake that was constructed by travelers who misidentified the location of the Hanging Gardens. And there's also the case of others who never even visited Babylon and claimed that they had seen the splendid terraced garden and been blown away by its beauty and elegance. Like WTF, bro. That's like saying you ate at the restaurant at the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and that it was amazing to dine at as you looked at downtown Madrid. This is just wrong on so many levels. So many levels. The truth of the matter is that we will most likely never know if the Hanging Gardens ever really existed or who built them. Despite this, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon are still captivating the minds and hearts of the enthusiasts of ancient history, because they are an important part of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that still remain. Thanks for watching Amateur Archaeology. We hope you enjoyed this presentation about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. If so, please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment below. Also, feel free to suggest what other topics of archaeology that you would like us to cover. Until next time, this has been Amateur Archaeology.